I'll search for current seismological information to make the story more realistic and engaging. Now let me search for some recent earthquake events to make the story more realistic. Based on my research, I'll now create an engaging 900-word expansion of Part 1, using simple English and a natural human-centered tone. Part 1. The Warning Signs. Dr. Kim So-hee rubbed her tired eyes and glanced at the digital clock on her desk, 3:47 a.m. The Seoul National University's earthquake monitoring station was quiet, except for the steady hum of computers and the occasional beep from the seismic equipment. She had been working late, studying patterns in small tremors from the previous week, when something on her screen made her heart skip a beat. The seismograph display showed something she had never seen before in her 12 years as a seismologist. Instead of the usual random earthquake activity scattered across the globe, there were patterns. Deep underground vibrations were occurring at exactly the same time across 3 different continents. Chile, New Zealand, and parts of Japan were all showing unusual seismic signatures happening within minutes of each other. So he leaned closer to her monitors, double-checking the data feeds from monitoring stations worldwide. The readings were clear. These weren't measurement errors or equipment malfunctions. Something was happening deep beneath the Earth's surface, something that connected fault lines thousands of miles apart. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for her phone. Dr. Park Jun-ho, her department head, would not be happy about being woken up at this hour, but this couldn't wait until morning. The phone rang 3 times before Park's sleepy voice answered. So-hee, what's wrong? It's almost 4 a.m. Professor Park, I'm sorry to call so late, but you need to see this, she said, her voice urgent. There's something very strange happening. With the seismic data, multiple fault lines are showing synchronized activity. It's unlike anything in our records. Park yawned. Are you sure it's not just a software glitch? Sometimes the computers... I've checked everything twice. So he interrupted. This is real. The pattern suggests these earthquakes aren't random. They're connected somehow. After a long pause, Park sighed. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Don't touch anything until I arrive. While waiting for her supervisor, So-hee continued analyzing the data. The seismic waves had a specific frequency and depth that made no sense according to current geological theories. Earthquakes happened when tectonic plates moved against each other, but these tremors were coming from much deeper, from the Earth's mantle itself. She pulled up historical seismic data going back 50 years. Nothing matched the current pattern. The closest example was from 1960, when a massive earthquake in Chile triggered tsunamis across the Pacific Ocean, but even that was different. These current tremors were happening simultaneously, not as a chain reaction. When Dr. Park arrived, his usually neat appearance was disheveled. His gray hair stuck up at odd angles, and he was still wearing his pajama shirt under his jacket. Show me what you found, he said, his tone now serious. So he pointed to the screens showing real-time seismic activity. Look at these timestamps. Tremors in the Andes Mountains in Chile occurred at 3:32 a.m. Within 7 minutes, similar tremors appeared in New Zealand's South Island. Then just 5 minutes later, tremors in Japan's underwater fault lines. Park studied the data, his expression growing more concerned with each passing minute. The depths are wrong, he muttered. These are coming from at least 400 kilometers, underground, deeper than most earthquakes. That's not the strangest part, so he added. She switched to a different screen showing wave patterns. The frequency of these tremors matches perfectly across all 3 locations. It's as if they're all part of one massive system. By 6 a.m., their small office was buzzing with activity. 3 more researchers had arrived after receiving calls from Park. Dr. Yoon Mi-rae, a geology professor from Yonsei University, sat at a computer analyzing the chemical composition of underground rock in the affected areas. Dr. Kim Tae-jin, a specialist in tectonic movements, was on the phone with colleagues in Chile and New Zealand. I'm getting reports from monitoring stations across the Pacific Rim, Tae-jin announced. Similar unusual readings in Alaska, Indonesia, and the Philippines. Whatever this is, it's spreading. Mi-rae looked up from her screen, her face pale. I've never seen anything like this before. The chemical signatures suggest massive changes in underground pressure across multiple continents simultaneously. As morning approached, more disturbing data came in. Ocean monitoring stations reported strange temperature variations in deep ocean trenches. Atmospheric sensors detected unusual electromagnetic readings in the upper atmosphere. Even more puzzling, several sensitive instruments designed to measure Earth's magnetic field showed minor but consistent fluctuations. So he felt a chill run down her spine as she realized they might be witnessing something unprecedented in human history. The Earth seemed to be responding to forces they didn't understand, forces that connected the deepest parts of the planet across vast distances. Dr. Park made a decision that would change everything. "We need to alert the international seismic monitoring community immediately," he said. "If this is what I think it might be, the world needs to know." As Sohee began composing urgent emails to earthquake monitoring centers around the globe, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning. The Earth was trying to tell them something, and the message was becoming clearer with each passing tremor. Something big was coming, something that would test humanity's understanding of the planet they called home. The sun was rising over Seoul, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, as if the planet itself was sending a warning signal. So he looked out the window and wondered if this beautiful morning might be one of the last peaceful ones they would see for a long time. Within 2 days of Dr. Kim So-hee's discovery, the nightmare became reality. At 2:15 p.m. local time, the ground beneath the small Chilean city of Valparaiso began to shake violently. The earthquake, measuring 8.2 on the Richter scale, lasted for 4 terrifying minutes, toppling buildings and cracking roads like broken glass. Maria Gonzalez was hanging laundry on her third-floor balcony when the world started moving. The clothesline snapped as the building swayed back and forth like a ship in a storm. She grabbed onto the railing, watching in horror as cars bounced on the street below like toys. The sound was deafening, a deep rumbling that seemed to come from the Earth's very core, mixed with the crash of falling concrete and breaking glass. Thousands of miles away in New Zealand, farm worker James Thompson was herding sheep when his dog suddenly became agitated, barking and running in circles. The sheep scattered in panic just minutes before the ground began to shake. The 7.9 earthquake struck at 1:45 a.m. local time, turning the peaceful countryside into chaos. Thompson's house, built by his grandfather 70 years ago, crumbled like a deck of cards. But it wasn't just the earthquakes that terrified people. In Seoul, marine biologist Dr. Choi Hye-jin received a call that made her blood run cold. Whales were beaching themselves along the eastern coast of South Korea. Not just a few, but hundreds of them, washing ashore in groups like they were fleeing from something in the deep ocean. "I've studied marine life for 20 years, Dr. Choi told her colleague as they stood on the beach surrounded by massive whale carcasses. "I've never seen behavior like this. It's as if they're trying to escape from the ocean itself." Meanwhile, in Egypt, Dr. Ahmed Hassan was working late in his Cairo laboratory when every electromagnetic sensor in the building started screaming. The readings were impossible, levels of electromagnetic activity that his equipment had never recorded before. The lights flickered, and his computer screens went haywire for several minutes before everything returned to normal. "This doesn't make sense," he muttered, staring at the data. The spikes in electromagnetic activity had occurred at exactly the same time as the Chilean earthquake, even though Cairo was 12,000 kilometers away. Back at Seoul National University, Professor Park Jun-ho's emergency task force was working around the clock. The small office had transformed into a war room, with screens showing seismic data from around the world, phones constantly ringing, and coffee cups scattered everywhere. Dr. Kim So-hee hadn't slept in 36 hours. Her eyes were red and strained, but she couldn't stop analyzing the incoming data. What she was seeing defied everything she had learned about geology. The New Zealand earthquake happened exactly 4 hours and 18 minutes after the one in Chile, she announced to the room. "That's not a coincidence. There's a pattern here, a timing that suggests these events are connected." Dr. Yoon Mi-rae, who had been studying underwater volcanic activity, suddenly looked up from her computer with a pale face. "You all need to see this," she said. her voice barely above a whisper. On her screen was an image from deep ocean sensors showing volcanic activity on the seafloor. But this wasn't normal volcanic activity. Instead of isolated underwater eruptions, there was a network of volcanic vents releasing huge amounts of methane and sulfur compounds into the ocean. This is happening across multiple ocean basins simultaneously, she explained. The Atlantic, Pacific, and Indian Oceans all showing increased volcanic activity at depths we've never seen before. The implications were terrifying. Methane releases from the ocean floor could affect global climate patterns. The sulfur compounds were already changing ocean chemistry in ways scientists didn't fully understand. As reports flooded in from monitoring stations worldwide, a horrifying picture began to emerge. The Earth's crust wasn't just moving randomly, it was responding to something deeper. Satellites detected unusual heat signatures from the planet's core. Deep drilling sites reported temperature increases at unprecedented depths. Dr. Park called an emergency meeting with government officials. The conference room in Seoul's government building was filled with serious faces, ministers, military officials, and scientists all trying to understand what was happening to their planet. Minister Kim, Dr. Park addressed the elderly woman, who led the country's disaster management department. We need to prepare for something we've never dealt with before. These aren't isolated earthquakes. Something is happening deep inside the Earth that's affecting the entire planet. Minister Kim frowned. Are you saying there will be more earthquakes? We're saying the Earth is changing in ways we don't understand, Dr. Kim So-hee interjected. The patterns suggest this is just the beginning. While the scientists debated in Seoul, ordinary people around the world were starting to notice strange things. In coastal areas, tides weren't following normal patterns. Birds were migrating at the wrong times of year. Even household pets were acting strangely, hiding under beds or refusing to go outside. Sandra Morrison, a teacher in California, noticed her cat hadn't left the bathroom in 2 days. Her dog wouldn't stop whimpering and scratching at the basement door. When she asked her neighbors, they reported similar behavior from their pets. It's like they know something we don't, she told her husband as they watched their normally social golden retriever cowering in the corner. The most disturbing reports came from deep mines around the world. In a copper mine in Chile, workers reported strange noises coming from deeper tunnels, sounds they described as groaning or breathing. A coal mine in Australia had to be evacuated when miners reported the walls were sweating, a strange warm liquid they had never seen before. As Day 3 began, Dr. Kim So-hee made a discovery that changed everything. While analyzing the earthquake data, she noticed that the timing between events was getting shorter. The gap between the Chilean and New Zealand earthquakes had been 4 hours. Now, new tremors were appearing with only 2-hour intervals between them. It's accelerating, she whispered, staring at her screen. Whatever is causing this is getting stronger. The cascade had begun, and there was no way to stop it. 3 weeks after Dr. Kim So-hee first spotted the strange seismic patterns, the world faced a terrifying truth. What they were witnessing wasn't just a series of unusual earthquakes. It was something far more catastrophic. The Earth's magnetic field, the invisible shield that had protected life for millions of years, was not just flickering, it was failing. Dr. Yoon Ji-woo, a magnetospheric physicist who had spent 15 years studying the Earth's magnetic field, stood in his laboratory at Pohang University, staring at readings that made no sense. The magnetic field strength was dropping at a rate that should have taken centuries, not weeks. This is impossible, he muttered, adjusting his instruments for the 100th time. But the readings remained the same. The magnetic field was weakening by 0.2% each day, a rate that meant complete collapse within 2 years. In Tokyo, Dr. Tanaka Akiko was making an even more disturbing discovery. Solar activity was increasing dramatically. The sun, usually predictable in its cycles, was bombarding Earth with particle streams that were becoming stronger each day. It's like the sun knows our shield is weakening, she explained to her research team. The solar wind is penetrating deeper into our atmosphere than ever recorded. Dr. Tanaka had been studying solar-terrestrial interactions for 20 years. But she had never seen data like this. The particles from the sun were not just affecting power grids and satellites. They were actually making the Earth's geological instability worse. Meanwhile, in the mountains of Mexico, volcanologist Dr. Maria Santos was climbing an active volcano with a growing sense of dread. Colima volcano, which had been quietly smoking for decades, was showing signs of major activity for the first time in over a century. As she collected gas samples from the volcanic vents, her instruments detected something unexpected. The volcanic emissions contained rare isotopes that suggested the magma was coming from much deeper than normal, from the boundary between the Earth's mantle and core. "This magma is ancient," she radioed to her base camp. "It's been locked away for millions of years, and now it's moving upward across the entire Pacific Ring of Fire." Back in Seoul, Professor Park Jun-ho's international team was connecting the dots, and the picture was terrifying. Dr. Kim So-hee had been analyzing data from hundreds of monitoring stations worldwide when she made a chilling discovery. "The earthquake patterns aren't random," she announced to the room full of scientists. "They're following magnetic field lines. As the magnetic field weakens in certain areas, that's exactly where the strongest seismic activity is occurring." Dr. Choi Min-jun, an atmospheric physicist visiting from Busan, added more disturbing evidence. "The northern lights have been visible as far south as Seoul," he said. "That's never happened in recorded history, and they're not the usual green color. They're deep red, which indicates high-energy particle bombardment." The team realized they were witnessing a perfect storm of cosmic proportions. The Earth's magnetic poles were beginning to reverse, something that happened roughly every 780,000 years throughout Earth's history. But this time, there was a crucial difference. The sun was at the peak of an unusually active cycle, bombarding the planet with radiation just as its protective shield was failing. Dr. Yoon Mi-rae, studying deep ocean data, made another frightening connection. "The seafloor volcanic activity is following the same pattern," she reported. "Areas where the magnetic field is weakest are experiencing the most underwater eruptions." Ordinary people around the world were starting to notice strange effects. In hospitals, doctors reported unusual numbers of patients complaining of headaches, dizziness, and disorientation. Electronic devices were malfunctioning more frequently. GPS systems were losing accuracy. Jennifer Walsh, a pilot flying between Los Angeles and Seattle, experienced something that would haunt her for years. At 35,000 feet, her instruments suddenly went crazy. The plane's navigation system showed they were flying upside down, the radio filled with static, and the autopilot disengaged without warning. "For 3 minutes we were essentially flying blind," she later told investigators. "The compass was spinning like a top. It was the scariest moment of my flying career." Scientists faced a terrible dilemma. Dr. Park Jun-ho called emergency meetings with world leaders, but the message was almost impossible to deliver. How do you tell people that the planet's protective systems are failing without causing worldwide panic? In a secure video conference with officials from 20 countries, Dr. Park tried to explain the situation. "We're facing a magnetic pole reversal combined with exceptional solar activity," he said to the screens showing worried faces from around the globe. "What does that mean for us?" asked the British representative. Dr. Kim So-hee responded, "In simple terms, the Earth's invisible shield is weakening just as our sun is becoming more aggressive. This combination is affecting everything: the ground we stand on, the air we breathe, and the technology we depend on." The French delegate leaned forward. "How long do we have?" "The magnetic field reversal could take decades to complete," Dr. Tanaka explained. "But the intense solar activity is happening now. We're already seeing effects, and they're going to get worse before they get better." Some officials wanted to withhold the information to prevent panic. Others argued that people deserved to know the truth. As debates raged in government buildings worldwide, nature continued its relentless course. New volcanoes were awakening across the Pacific Ring of Fire. Mount Rainier in Washington showed its first signs of activity in 500 years. Alaska's Mount Redoubt began emitting unusual gases. In Japan, previously dormant volcanoes were heating up. Dr. Santos, now coordinating with volcanologists worldwide, felt overwhelmed by the scope of the crisis. "We're monitoring over 1,200 Volcanoes showing unusual activity, she reported. This isn't just random. They're all responding to the same deep Earth changes. The revelation was complete. Earth was entering a period of dramatic change that would last not months or years, but potentially centuries. The magnetic pole reversal, combined with extreme solar activity, was triggering responses throughout the planet's systems, geological, atmospheric, and biological. As Dr. Kim So-hee looked at the latest data, she realized that her original call for help had uncovered something far more significant than unusual earthquakes. They had discovered that the Earth itself was transforming, and humanity would have to learn to live in a very different world. The fourth week began with a sound that terrified millions, a deep rumble that seemed to come from the Earth itself. In Italy, Mount Vesuvius, the volcano that had destroyed Pompeii nearly 2,000 years ago, awakened with a vengeance that no one expected. Giuseppe Moretti was tending his vineyard on the slopes of Vesuvius when the ground beneath his feet grew warm. He knelt down and pressed his hand to the earth. It was hot, almost burning. Within hours, steam began rising from cracks in his vineyard. By midnight, the mountain exploded. The eruption wasn't like the gradual lava flows that scientists had predicted. Instead, Vesuvius sent an enormous column of ash 20 kilometers into the sky, creating a mushroom cloud visible from space. The ash cloud spread like a gray blanket across southern Europe, turning day into night for millions of people. In Naples, just 12 kilometers from the volcano, panic filled the streets. Elena Rossi grabbed her 3 children and ran from their apartment as ash began falling like gray snow. The sky turned black in minutes, she later recounted. We couldn't breathe, we couldn't see. It was like the world was ending. Planes across Europe were grounded immediately. The ash cloud, carried by high-altitude winds, reached as far as London within 48 hours. Thousands of flights were canceled, stranding travelers worldwide. But Vesuvius was just the beginning. Dr. Maria Santos, the volcanologist who had been tracking volcanic activity worldwide, watched in horror as her worst predictions came true. Within days of Vesuvius erupting, 5 more volcanoes across the Pacific Ring of Fire showed signs of major activity. In Japan, Dr. Tanaka Akiko was monitoring the Fuji volcano when her seismic equipment detected something unprecedented. Deep underground sounds like a giant breathing were coming from beneath Mount Fuji. Local residents reported hearing strange noises at night, deep groaning sounds that seemed to come from miles below. It's like the earth is in pain, said Yamamoto Kenji, a farmer living near the mountain. My family has lived here for 6 generations and the mountain has always been peaceful. Now it feels angry. The volcanic activity triggered a cascade of events that Dr. Kim So-hee's models had predicted, but hoped would never happen. As ash filled the atmosphere, global weather patterns began changing rapidly. Temperatures dropped in some areas while others experienced extreme heat. Monsoon rains failed in India. Drought hit areas that were never dry. Dr. Choi Hye-jin, the marine biologist, made a discovery that sent chills through the scientific community. Ocean currents, the giant rivers of water that regulate Earth's climate, were changing direction. The Gulf Stream, which brought warm water to Europe, was slowing down for the first time in recorded history. Whales are abandoning their traditional migration routes, she reported. They're swimming in patterns we've never documented. It's as if they're trying to escape invisible danger in the water. Even more terrifying, deep-sea temperatures were rising rapidly. Dr. Choi's underwater sensors detected pockets of superheated water near volcanic vents, creating underwater storms that were killing marine life in massive numbers. Meanwhile, in Dendais, the United States Yellowstone National Park became the center of worldwide attention. Dr. Jennifer Thompson, a geologist working at the park, noticed unusual activity in the famous geysers. Old Faithful, which had erupted predictably every 90 minutes for over a century, began erupting randomly. The ground around the geyser basins is rising, she reported anxiously. We're seeing uplift patterns that suggest massive magma movement beneath the entire park. The Yellowstone caldera, a supervolcano that could devastate half of North America if it erupted, was showing signs of awakening. Tourists were evacuated from the park as earthquakes increased in frequency and intensity. Dr. Yoon Ji-woo's magnetic field monitors across the globe detected alarming changes. The weakening magnetic field was no longer just failing. It was becoming chaotic. Compass needles in many locations spun wildly. GPS systems became increasingly unreliable. Power grids began failing across multiple continents as cosmic radiation, no longer blocked by the weakening magnetic field, interfered with electronic systems. In Scandinavia, the aurora borealis appeared, during daytime, painting the sky in unnatural reds and purples. Northern Canada experienced a complete blackout when a solar storm hit the weakened magnetic field. Hospitals running on backup generators, traffic lights going dark, and communication systems failing created chaos across the region. Dr. Ahmed Hassan, the atmospheric physicist in Cairo, documented dangerous levels of particulate matter in the atmosphere. The combination of volcanic ash and changing weather patterns created toxic clouds over major cities. In Beijing, millions of people wore masks as the air quality reached hazardous levels. Children were kept indoors, and the elderly struggled to breathe. Similar scenes played out in New Delhi, Mexico City, and Los Angeles. Professor Park Jun-ho's international team worked frantically to predict the next major events, but their models showed only 60% accuracy. The Earth's systems were changing too rapidly for their computers to keep up. It's like trying to predict the weather during a hurricane while standing in the eye of the storm, Dr. Kim So-hee explained to worried government officials. Everything is connected, but the connections are changing faster than we can understand them. World leaders faced impossible decisions. Some countries began evacuating coastal areas, anticipating tsunamis from underwater volcanic activity. Others prepared for mass migrations as changing weather patterns made certain regions uninhabitable. In a desperate attempt to maintain some control, governments activated emergency broadcasting systems. The messages were stark. Prepare for prolonged disruptions to normal life. Stock up on essential supplies. Stay informed through official channels. But as the fourth week ended, it became clear that the Earth's fury was just beginning to unleash itself upon the world. The breaking point had arrived, and humanity faced its greatest challenge since the dawn of civilization. The planet itself seemed to be transforming, and no amount of preparation could fully ready people for what was coming next. The world held its breath as scientists confirmed what everyone feared most. Yellowstone was awakening. The massive supervolcano beneath the park showed clear signs that it might erupt for the first time in 640,000 years. The consequences would be catastrophic beyond imagination. Dr. Jennifer Thompson stood at the Yellowstone monitoring station, watching her instruments record the most intense seismic activity in the park's recorded history. The ground was rising at a rate of 2.5 centimeters per day. Hot springs that had been dormant for decades suddenly burst to life, shooting scalding water high into the air. "We have maybe 72 hours before a major event," she announced during an emergency video conference with world leaders. The word sent shivers down the spines of everyone listening. Within hours, the largest peacetime evacuation in human history began. Military aircraft, civilian planes, buses, trains, and even private vehicles were mobilized to move 2.3 million people away from the potential disaster zone. The highways leading away from Yellowstone became rivers of humanity, fleeing from nature's ultimate weapon. Rebecca Martinez, a school teacher from West Yellowstone, Montana, grabbed her 2 children and joined the exodus. "We had 30 minutes to pack our entire lives," she later recalled. "I took photo albums, the kids' favorite toys, and my grandmother's ring. Everything else we left behind, hoping we'd return someday." But Yellowstone wasn't the only concern. Dr. Yoon Ji-woo's magnetic field sensors detected something unprecedented. The magnetic poles were reversing faster than ever recorded. The North Pole was racing toward Siberia at 50 kilometers per year, while the South Pole wandered toward Australia. As the magnetic field weakened further, more cosmic radiation reached Earth's surface. Dr. Tanaka Akiko's solar monitoring equipment showed that the sun was bombarding the planet with the most intense solar storms in 500 years. The effects were immediate and widespread. Satellites failed one by one. GPS systems became so unreliable that airlines grounded most flights. In some northern cities, The aurora appeared even during broad daylight, creating an eerie green glow across the sky. Despite the chaos, humanity began showing remarkable resilience. Dr. Kim So-hee's team, working with scientists worldwide, made a breakthrough. They developed an improved earthquake prediction system using artificial intelligence to analyze the complex patterns they had discovered. We can now predict earthquakes with 85% accuracy up to 72 hours in advance, Dr. Kim announced proudly. Her system had already saved thousands of lives by giving people time to evacuate before major tremors struck. The international cooperation was unprecedented. Countries that had been political enemies for decades began sharing resources and information. China sent earthquake experts to California. Japanese tsunami specialists flew to Chile. European volcanologists worked alongside American colleagues at Yellowstone. Dr. Maria Santos found herself coordinating the largest volcanic monitoring effort in history. Over 1,200 volcanoes were now showing unusual activity, requiring constant surveillance. Her team, now numbering over 800 scientists from 50 countries, worked in shifts around the clock. We've created a global early warning system, she explained. When one volcano shows signs of eruption, we can predict which others might follow, within hours. Regular people also showed incredible strength and ingenuity. In Japan, where earthquakes had always been part of life, communities came together like never before. Neighborhood groups organized emergency supplies. Elderly residents were paired with younger helpers, and children practiced evacuation drills like games. Hiroshi Yamamoto, an elderly shop owner in Tokyo, turned his store into a community center. We share food, water, and news, he said. My neighbors have become my family. This crisis has brought us closer together. Technology played a crucial role in survival. Social media platforms created special emergency channels that worked even when regular internet failed. Ham radio operators around the world formed networks to relay critical information when other communications broke down. Dr. Ahmed Hassan's atmospheric monitoring network helped cities prepare for the toxic air caused by volcanic ash. Air purification. Systems originally designed for industrial use were quickly modified for homes and schools. Power grid operators learned to work with the new reality. When solar storms knocked out electricity, backup systems kicked in faster than ever before. Rolling blackouts were carefully managed to keep hospitals and emergency services running. The most remarkable changes happened in how societies organized themselves. Communities that had been isolated for generations opened their doors to evacuees. Farmers shared their land with displaced families. Empty office buildings became temporary shelters. Nina Johansson, a hotel owner in rural Sweden, welcomed 200 evacuees from cities affected by the magnetic storms. We prepared for 50 people, she laughed, but somehow we made room for everyone. People slept in hallways, conference rooms, even the kitchen. Nobody complained. As the 6th week approached, the full scope of the changes became clear. The planet was entering a new era that would last for centuries. Climate patterns were shifting permanently. The magnetic field would take decades to stabilize. New volcanic activity would continue for years. Yet humans were adapting with surprising speed. Urban farming projects sprang up to replace agricultural areas affected by climate change. Solar panels designed to work in low magnetic field conditions were developed in months instead of years. New building codes included earthquake and volcanic protection as standard features. Professor Park Jun-ho's warning system evolved into a global network more sophisticated than any government had ever imagined. Dr. Kim So-hee continued refining her earthquake predictions, achieving 90% accuracy by the 7th week. Students around the world studied the crisis as it unfolded, becoming the first generation to understand both the planet's fury and humanity's ability to adapt. They would grow up knowing that Earth was dynamic, dangerous, but ultimately survivable with cooperation and preparation. The planet had unleashed its fury, showing humanity that nature was far more powerful than anyone had imagined. But in facing this incredible challenge, people discovered something equally powerful: their capacity to work together, adapt, and survive even when the ground beneath their feet stopped being solid and the sky above offered no protection. As Dr. Kim So-hee looked at her screens showing the latest data, she realized that her single call for help had sparked not just a scientific investigation, but a transformation of human society itself. The Earth would never be the same, but neither would humanity. And perhaps that was exactly what both needed.